am incredibly excited to introduce Jasbir Kooner to give this presentation on the BRM Advantage in the age of AI, specifically because she has lived this experience. Jasbir has been a part of the community and I personally will say a forward thinker and really on the tip of the spear when it comes to understanding how BRM affects and impacts the future of work, specifically within AI. And she did start recently or several years ago as a BRM within an organization at Englobe and has since had a few transitions to now be the director of IT and artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. So while tends to be a seemingly niche area, she is applying her BRM skills that she has learned throughout all of her time and experience to really bring the flavor of BRM into how that impacts artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence plays into the role of what BRMs do. So without further ado, I am incredibly excited to turn it over to Jasbir and welcome here today. Super excited.
Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you to the BRM Institute for this opportunity to speak about a subject I am really excited to be here with you today to present. I've been thinking about this subject for months, and thank you to Rachel, BRM Institute, Tom, for putting together this webinar, because it's something I wanted to share. And it's something that I feel everyone could benefit from, especially as we're going into the new year. So I'm sure everyone's expecting me to speak about AI. What I wanted to actually speak about today is why relationships are the real intelligence over artificial intelligence. So what we've seen over the last 2 years, it feels that every meeting, every article, as well as every conference has somehow circled back to AI. New models, new pilots, new headlines. It's been exciting, but it's also a bit consuming. Everything we do in one way or another is being framed around AI. And honestly, if this webinar didn't have AI in the title, I'm not sure whether we'd have a great turnout like we have had today. So it's a buzzword that gets everyone in the room. And since we are here, I want to talk about what really keeps us together. Because somewhere in all the noise about productivity and automation, I believe that we've started talking less about something far more fundamental, and that's relationships. So relationships between individuals, relationships within teams, as well as between humans and technology we are using every day. So that's really why I wanted to have this webinar today, not to add to the AI hype, but to zoom out with everyone today and look at what's underneath all of it. The truth is that AI is changing work. Yes, I'm sure we've seen it firsthand, but it's also quietly reshaping how we relate to each other. And that's something I believe we're not speaking about, and it's not making the headlines. So the more digital we become, the more important connection becomes. And I believe that over the next few years, relationships will become the most strategic asset any organization has. So I'll say that one more time, just for everyone here. Relationships are going to be a strategic asset. The way that we've seen relationships in the past, they're going to change, and more organizations are going to want to talk about relationships and how they're impacting the organization, and they'll make it a part of their strategy. So I wanted to do this webinar because I see this shift happening in consulting research. So I tend to read a lot. For anyone that follows me on LinkedIn, I post a lot too, because I kind of use it as my library catalog. And I go back to my own posts for any research or webinars or any articles that I'm writing. So what I've noticed is with research papers from Gartner, Deloitte, KPMG, even Microsoft, they all highlight words like trust, collaboration, empathy, and relational leadership. Those aren't just buzzwords. They're signals of what's coming next. So today I want us to all take a step back to explore what it looks like when we put relationships back at the center of strategy, at the center of leadership, and how organizations are creating value. Because every innovation, every transformation, every success story, it all begins and ends with relationships. And I find we're starting to kind of forget that because everyone's jumped on this AI hype. So when we're focusing back on relationships, what that helps us to do as professionals is this is what we do as BRMs. This is our strong suit. This is where we excel. So if relationships are becoming the new strategic advantage, we're already sitting right where the future is heading. And that's where I want to take this webinar today. So now let's take a step back and look at what is actually happening. Technology is evolving faster than ever. Every week there is a new AI tool, a new model, a new promise of efficiency, as well as productivity. And yes, that is changing the way work gets done. But the deeper shift, the one that doesn't make the headlines, is how that's changing the relationships inside our organizations. AI is getting good at things such as processing information, automating repetitive work, as well as finding patterns that we humans may never have been able to find ourselves. But as humans, we're still unmatched at things like making sense of context, with which AI is still not able to do, building trust, as well as reading emotion and navigating complexity. And this is really important. So while AI is taking over parts of knowledge work, humans are stepping into what I like to call relationship work. Work that depends on empathy, connection, and judgment, the things that machines can't feel or fake. And even though we talk about AGI, there's certain aspects of humanity that AI will never be able to take over. So if we think about it in this simple term, AI can process information at scale, but humans process emotions at depth. AI can optimize decisions, but only humans can own them. And this is where I think the conversation gets really interesting for organizations, because the more technology we add, the more important the human layer becomes, the part that brings meaning, empathy, as well as connection. Organizations are transforming, and so are our roles. The value isn't in doing the work anymore. AI will be able to do that. The value is in connecting the work, in seeing the bigger picture, aligning people, and building trust across it all. And that's where relationship-driven leadership becomes not just relevant, but also essential. So when we talk about strategy in organizations, we usually think of frameworks, we think about roadmaps, or we think about data. But underneath all of that, before any strategy succeeds, there is one constant, and that is relationships. Every transformation, every initiative, as well as every success story, it all depends on the relationship behind it. And again, this is something I feel that we're forgetting in the hype of AI, especially in 2025, as we're creating strategies forwards. When I'm sitting at the table, I feel organizations are forgetting the human element, the relationship element. So when relationships are strong, collaboration flows naturally. People communicate, they're able to share context with each other, and they're also able to support each other. When relationships are weak, even the best strategy ends up failing. And we have stats that have proven this, that relationships need to be strong in order for strategy to succeed at any organization. And this is going to be even more important in the next few years, because as AI matures, it's going to start breaking down department silos. Data won't live in an isolated system anymore. It will move across the organization. Finance data will inform HR. HR insights will inform operations. Marketing data will influence sustainability. Everything's going to be connected in a way that it isn't connected today. We're going to see the breakdown of the silos. So here's the catch. Connection on paper doesn't mean collaboration in practice. For that to work, teams will need to trust each other. They'll need to share information without fear, make joint decisions, and align around common goals. And that will only happen if the relationships within these organizations are strong. I actually believe that departments in the future won't look the way that they do today. And when I'm saying future, I don't mean 3 to 5 years from now. I actually mean starting next year. We're really going to start to see, as more and more organizations really start to use AI, they will have to rethink the way that their organization is set up and how departments are set up. So these departments, they're going to be more fluid, more project-based, as well as more cross-functional. The real structure of organizations will be shaped less by hierarchy and more by networks of relationships. That is why I say relationships are the hidden foundation of strategy. That's what allows ideas, data, and innovation to move freely. And without them, none of this transformation would be able to happen. And if you still don't believe me, I'm going to ask you to think about the last major initiative that succeeded in your company. I bet it wasn't because of the software. I bet it was because of the people behind it. So this is where, again, we need to focus back on the people aspect, on the relationship aspect. So if you think about technology, use it. If you think about it, technology used to be the differentiator. The company with the best tools, the fastest system, or the biggest data set usually had the edge, but that's no longer true in this age of AI. AI is democratizing capability. Everyone now has access to powerful tools. That's the great equalizer. So if technology is no longer what sets us apart, what will? And that's going to be the human side, the relationship, the trust, and the collaboration that shape how we use the technology. Two organizations can use the same AI system and maybe even get the same results, but what will make the difference is the human layer around it. The trust, the collaboration, and the relationships that turn information into insights as well as actions. So with that, I would say, think about it from a ChatGPT perspective. If you're using an account and you're within the retail industry, we could type in a prompt and say, all right, I'm looking to create a strategy for kids' clothing. What should I do? If I put it in and somebody else puts in the same prompt, from an AI perspective, we may get the same output and it may tell us the same strategy. And this is where how we interpret that within our organizations as well as within our teams is going to make our strategy different. And it could make the difference between if it's successful and if it isn't. So data will drive insights, but relationships will drive action. You can automate processes, but you can't automate trust. And that is why I believe that the next competitive advantage is relational advantage. The organizations that will lead are the ones that are able to build faster than others, collaborate across boundaries more effectively, and use AI to strengthen, not replace human connection. So when you think about the future of your organization, don't just ask what technology are we going to invest in? Ask what relationships are we investing in? How do they look? And how are they going to change over the next couple of years? Because this is what's going to carry your strategy forward. So we've entered what I call the relationship economy. For years, organizations have measured success through things like financial capital, intellectual capital, and lately we've seen data capital in relation to AI. But what is rising now is relationship capital, the value created by trust, collaboration, as well as connection. Think about it. When people trust each other, decisions happen faster. When departments are able to collaborate, innovation scales. We see that the silos start to break down, and that benefits an organization. When leaders build empathy, the culture within the organization strengthens. Those outcomes all have economic impact. They reduce friction, they speed up change, and they create loyalty. And we can already see this shift. Consulting research from KPMG and Gartner are already highlighting things like relational intelligence as a leadership skill. They're talking about trust velocity, which is how quickly trust is built and maintained within organizations, as well as they're speaking about network strength. That's the depth and diversity of relationships inside an organization. So these are becoming the new indicators of organizational health. So as AI automates more of the technical work, what remains scarce and therefore valuable is trust. The future is not about owning more data, it's about building more connection. Because there comes a point where more data does not lead to better insights, it's the relationships around the data, the conversations and the context that turn information into understanding. So again, over the last couple of years, we've spoken a lot about data. and in data in relation to AI tools. Now, as we're starting to move forward, we're seeing that data can be constructed with synthetic data. So we don't need actual data. We can create it if our model needs it to be created. So this is, again, where there's certain aspects of technology that we're able to create on our own, whereas the human aspect, the relationship aspect, isn't something that could be so easily created. So in the relationship economy, success won't be defined by who has the best system, but by who has the strongest relationships. It'll be relationships internally with partners and with customers, maybe even with their AI tools. And for the AI tools aspect, that's probably a different webinar where we're looking at AI as a teammate. But that's another aspect of relationships that we can start to look at, is how do relationships differ between a human to a human and a human to a machine? Because a human to a machine is going to be a lot different in aspects of trust than what we've seen with human to human. So that's kind of, for this slide, that's where I want to really bring in that the BRM is the architect of connection, we're the designer of trust. So when we're looking at this and we're moving into a relationship economy, who's best positioned to lead that shift? That's the BRM. BRMs are the relationship architects of organizations. We are the ones that build the bridges between business and IT, between departments, as well as between people and purpose. And as AI becomes part of how work gets done, our role as BRM expands even further. It's not just about enabling value anymore. It's about designing how humans and systems work together with trust, alignment, and purpose. And I find, for myself especially, over the last 2 years, I've been so focused on the AI aspect and trying to keep up with everything that's happening with AI, that a lot of times I forget about the human aspect. I forget about the relationship aspect. So this is where I found that this conversation was so important for us to have, because we need to bring it back to the relationship. AI cannot be the primary anymore. We have to put relationships back at the top, and AI needs to go somewhere within our strategy. It could be second, it should be third, it could be third, depending on your organizations. So as AI becomes part of how work gets done, our role expands even further. I'm going to say it again, it's not just about enabling value anymore, it's about designing how humans and systems work together. So in the future, BRMs will be the ones helping organizations answer questions like, how do you build trust in digital collaboration? How do we align AI-driven insights with human judgment? And how do we keep empathy and connection at the center of transformation? And this is the type of conversations that I am not seeing anybody having at the table. And I'm also not seeing individuals speaking about it on LinkedIn or other forums. And I find it so important for us to start to have these conversations, because again, for us to be strategic and for our companies, our organizations to grow, relationships need to come back at the center. So as BRMs, will help to guide teams through uncertainty, will help leaders see across borders, as well as will remind organizations that relationships are not a byproduct of work, but they are the actual work. So again, there's going to be this redefinition of relationships that we're going to start to see in the next 2 to 3 years. And again, for everyone that's at this webinar, start to think about it now. Start to think about, I'm using this AI tool, how's this going to impact different departments? How are different relationships going to be impacted? And how will these relationships work? So that's the opportunity that I really see that's in front of us, to take everything we've always done, which is building trust, connecting people, translating strategy, and reimagine it for a world where humans and intelligent machines will work side by side as teammates. So again, it's an aspect of relationships that I'm not seeing enough of, but in every research paper that I read from the top consulting companies, you start to see more and more relationships coming in. They're starting to put the words in, and I believe AI was the buzzword of the past, and relationships going to eventually turn into the buzzword of the future. So when we think about the future of work, so much of the conversation is about technology, automation, and AI, as well as data. And that's pretty much been the conversation for, again, the last 2 years in every meeting that I'm sitting at, regardless of whatever department it is, everyone wants to talk AI. And there's also that FOMO aspect around AI, where a lot of individuals, what ends up happening is they'll attend a conference or they'll attend a webinar, and all of a sudden that they think, oh, we're not moving fast enough with AI. So everybody comes back to the organization and they want to have a conversation about AI. So that's kind of where we've seen that FOMO aspect take over in the last year and a half, 2 years. So the truth is that most skills in the next decade won't be technical, they will be human. And that's based on stats again. We're starting to see that soft skills are the skills of the future because a lot of the other skills AI will be able to do. So skills like empathy, the ability to really listen, to understand what someone needs, even when they can't put it into words. There's curiosity, which we don't speak enough about, and we need to speak more about. Asking questions that unlock new perspectives. And then there's the judgment aspect, knowing when to trust the data and when to trust your gut. So a lot of times what ends up happening is, and I've had this happen to me, where an AI tool will tell me to do something, and I know in my gut it's wrong. But because at times I trust the AI tool more than I trust myself, because the tool is so confident in what it's saying, I end up making the wrong judgment. So this is where, again, when the right individuals are sitting at the table, we have open relationships, everyone trusts each other, and we're looking at stuff in a different way. We're going to say, all right, the AI tool suggested this, but our gut tells us, and that's where our strategy gets created. So it's still a human strategy that's being created. AI is not a tool that's going to be able to, especially not today, do 100% of the work. There's human in the loop. And this is where it becomes very important that humans listen to our gut, that we talk to each other and we listen to each other, because we cannot rely on the tool to create us the best strategy and think that it's a successful strategy and it's going to work. Tools are not that strong, and tools do not understand context. Humans do. So this is where a strategy built by a human will always be stronger than a strategy that's built by AI. And last is connection. So being able to build trust across differences, departments, and even distances. And that's where we're going to start to see that the connection within organizations is going to look very different when AI tools start to be used, because the way that departments and organizations are working right now are in silos. So again, like I stated before, HR data will not be just contained for HR, for the HR department. All of the data is going to be at a level now that we've never seen it at, and it's going to be feeding each other. So again, keep that in mind. So if the data is all interconnected, how will departments and organizations be interconnected? How will that change the relationship aspect? So again, what I'm speaking about now, they're not soft skills. These are what I'm calling power skills, the things that hold organizations together when everything else changes. And a lot of stuff is going to change over the next 2 to 3 years. So AI can process information, but humans are the ones that are able to process emotion. AI can predict outcomes, but humans are the ones that are still able to create the meaning behind the outcome. And this is where it becomes really important that we understand the strengths of so if we look at it, it's important for us to understand what are our strengths as a human, what are our strengths when we're using an AI tool, and what are our strengths when we bring it together. But we still need to be able to separate it. So this means that what makes people, and so meaning is what makes people care enough to act. And we know that if individuals do not buy into a strategy, if they don't understand the why, that they won't act on it. The strategy will not succeed. So again, it comes back to the human, and again, it comes back to the relationship. An AI tool or a tool at any level will stop at that level. Afterwards, it's the human that takes over. So as we lead through the next wave of transformation, it's not about keeping up with the tools. It's about doubling down on the traits that are making us human. So again, if we take a step back, because everything we've talked about so far leads to this, what does an organization look like when it truly centers around relationships? I hope now that we've kind of gone through a couple of the slides, everyone's kind of thinking differently about their organizations, the current relationships, and what the future could look like. So it will definitely look different from what we know today. Decisions aren't made for people, they'll be made with people. Departments don't compete for resources. Instead, we want departments to collaborate around shared goals. And again, those shared goals within departments are going to look very different because we're going to see cross-department collaboration that's going to start to happen. So technology doesn't replace connection. What it's going to allow us to do is technology will enable it. So what are we looking at when we look at a relationship-centered organization? We're looking at trust that becomes a measurable strength, communication that flows across every level, not just from the top down. So a lot of organizations, again, will need to rethink the way that they're structured. That top-down organization will not be successful in the era of AI. We will need more flat organizations and, again, departments that are co-collaborating with each other. And we'll look at leaders to be connectors and not just controllers. So the old way of leadership will be forced to change, and we'll start to see these skills that in the past were more related to BRMs. We're going to need those skills to be seen at higher levels. So this is where, again, we're going to start to see that relationship shift. So culture will shift from command and control to connect and collaborate. And when this happens, innovation does not need to be forced. It happens naturally because people feel safe enough to share ideas as well as challenge each other. And again, keep in mind that when I say challenge each other, all of you are probably thinking a human to human challenge. That challenging each other may be a human to an AI challenge. So again, how does that relationship look like? Relationships will be redefined with human to human relationships and human to AI relationships, because a lot of the tools that we're using, they feel a lot more personal. My ChatGPT, I call it Bob, and it is a personal tool to me. I don't use the ChatGPT 5 model. I'm actually still using the 4.0 model because I find I work better with the 4.0 model. I didn't like the way that the 5 was interacting with me. So again, that's a personal feeling more so than it is a tech feeling. And one of the things that I've noticed is we're treating AI like we've treated software tools in the past, and AI is not a software tool. A software tool in the past was software. It was contained. We knew what the output was. We understood it. An AI tool is very personal. And for instance, I could put in a prompt today and it'll give me an outcome. And I could put in the same prompt tomorrow and I'll get a different outcome. So again, we need to look at the relationships that we have with these tools, as well as how do we connect and how do we challenge these tools when we're interacting with them and they're giving us certain suggestions. So AI may provide the systems, but relationships will provide the structure. They are what turn information into understanding and collaboration into momentum. So that's the future I see, where relational intelligence becomes the foundation of organizational intelligence. So we've covered a lot today. We've talked a lot about how AI is changing work, how it's breaking down silos, how it's going to be shifting roles, as well as reshaping what organizations look like. But through all of that, one thing remains constant, and that's us, the BRMs. Because while the tools evolve, the foundation does not. Trust, empathy, connection. Those are still the forces that move people and organizations forward. So if everything is changing, the question we should be asking is, what should stay human? Maybe it's how we make decisions, maybe it's how we listen, and it could also be how we care about each other. Whatever it is, that's the space where we create real value. And as BRMs, we have an incredible opportunity now to help our organizations see the relationships aren't what come after the work, they are the work. So again, this puts us in a very pivotal stage right now for the future, for us to allow our organizations to understand how relationships are going to evolve with AI. So every innovation, every transformation, and every success story, it always begins and ends with relationships. And if there's one thing I want you to take away today, it's this: AI is changing a lot, faster than any of us could have imagined. But as BRMs, we can't afford to jump on the bandwagon and forget who we are. Because who we are, the connectors, the bridge builders, the translators of trust, is going to be absolutely pivotal in the years ahead. Relationships are going to matter more than they ever have. So please do not get lost in the AI hype at the expense of what makes us who we are. Technology will keep evolving, but relationships will always be what moves organizations forward. Thank you so much. I'm finished my presentation. I wanted to keep it a bit shorter so individuals, so we could kind of have a conversation actually about what everyone thought about the presentation. Did it make you think differently? Because that was my goal for going into 2026. I've been thinking about this for many months now, and I wanted to share it with the community because I find there's so much that could be done around relationships, and not enough people are talking about it. And I wanted everyone here today to kind of jump on this bandwagon with me and kind of see where the future goes with AI and relationships.
All right, so we are going to take questions for people that want to raise their hand and ask Jasbir a question. So I'm going to try to make sure if I don't get you in order, I apologize. But Astia, you're right front and center. So I'm going to let you come off mute and ask your question.
Hi, Jasbir. Mic check.
Hey, we hear you, Astia. Hi.
Excellent. Well, what you said about architects of connections resonated a lot. I am also quite intrigued with the idea when we have cross-functional teams and AI bridges that gap in data. So can we pull this thread? And I guess my question in it would be, how will BRM role would evolve? Because we are now those connectors. But if in this ideal world with structure, the teams already be cross-functional, they get access to data quickly, what skills can we lean in, and what would we look like in that future space?
And so that's where it becomes so interesting, because it would all depend on the organization, on the way the organization is structured and the departments are structured. I still feel that you need somebody to control the relationships, right? Because relationships, even though we want them to happen organically, there still needs to be a start to them. And right now, over the next 2 to 3 years, and again, this is, so what I presented today, it's what I'm seeing, and maybe I'm, seeing something that won't happen for a bit, right? But the way that I'm seeing it is that relationships are going to be super important, but the BRM is still going to be leading the charge. And that's where for us to start to have those conversations on how do we lead that. So right now, our relationships could be more siloed or more segmented. What I see is our relationships becoming organization-wide, and we'll become the leaders of relationships across the companies. Does that make sense? And Astia, there's no black and white in this. I wish I could give you a direct answer, right? So I know one organization, for instance, where they actually, it's a bigger organization, and they, with AI, they have, let's say, their finance department. And, before, like, we had an IT department and a finance department. If you needed, you would go to IT. Now that the tool is within finance department, they're the owners of the tool. It's no longer within IT. What they actually did is they took an IT individual and they put them in the finance department. And so that's where it becomes intriguing. So again, this is at a level. So let's say this finance tool is an AI tool that's being used within finance, right? You have an HR tool, you have all these different AI tools. But at the top, you're going to have an organizational AI tool where all of your data lakes are going to go into that. And that's where the real insights happen. And that's where I see the BRM at the organizational aspect with the data and the tool and the relationships. And how do we structure it going? I said I don't believe in top down. So I don't want to say top down, but the easiest way to explain it is how do we structure it from the organizational level to the department level? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it gives a little bit of an inspiration to lead that change, at least for my organization. So a lot of reflection points. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. The article that really started me thinking differently was a Microsoft article. And I was like, if Microsoft, a tech company, is talking about relationships, I really need to pay attention here. It was always starting to mention relationships. And I was like, usually in the tech world, relationship seems like such a soft skill that it's not mentioned. Why is it being mentioned now? So that's kind of where I had started, but I didn't read the infotech. Maybe if you have access to it, if it's open, you could send us the link and we could read it and kind of see how it goes. But again, for my aspect was for individuals that were able to join today, it was how do we start having conversations with our organization that BRM isn't just a role, a siloed role within a certain aspect of the business, that relationships need to be company-wide now. So how does that strategy look like? Hey, Allison, are you here?
It looks like
Yes,
she
I
is.
am.
Allison, oh, nice.
And I didn't pay you to say anything, so thank you.
You're welcome. No, I was.
This is the best endorsement, Allison.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I think what I wanted to add is I totally agree with what you're saying, Jasbir, and I love it. I'm actually doing a talk tomorrow to some of our clients about a similar, not specifically around AI, but just around the importance of relationships. And I agree with you 100% as well. While I think the BRM function is important and is not going away and should not go away, I am seeing a lot more of it, more of a need for it to be throughout the organization, including at that leadership level. So that's one of the things that I've been seeing. But yes, love everything that you've been saying. I think this presentation's been awesome.
Thank you. And so again, that was my, like, what I wanted everybody to take away is the BRM role is going to get stronger. And this is where we're at that pivotal point where we can be in charge of the conversation and we could be ahead of it. So everybody's talking AI all the time. We're forgetting the relationship aspect. We need to say, all right, we're using AI. This is what the tool does. Now, how does this change the relationship? How does this change the department? How do we reorganize? And also, Allison, I'm sure like you've probably seen it firsthand, is that there's a fear around AI. And I feel that that fear can be offset by relationships, right? And so if we do it in a way, and this is where I really feel that the BRM is the right person to take the lead. And that's why I wanted to do this webinar, just for everybody to start thinking differently. And like 2026 strategies are happening, and for us to really just concentrate on that.
Yeah, no, love it. And I think, I mean, one thing I'll add as well is, yes, there's a fear of BRM, but there's also, sorry, not fear of BRM, fear of AI.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be afraid of BRM. No. There's a fear of AI, but there's also, you know, kind of like a, oh my gosh, like a reactionary, I need to put in AI. And people are forgetting about the purpose behind it and what we're actually trying to accomplish. And it's to enable humans. And so I think as long as we have that focus on the people, the human behind it, that's really what we're after and what we're trying to accomplish here. And yes, agree 100% that the BRM is in a prime position to really help, you know, push that forward, push that agenda forward.
And that's where, again, I think relationships have always been in the back end, and they're going to be in the forefront. And that's why we need to make sure we're ready. Sorry, Avi, you were saying?
No, there was something else that I remember you mentioning during the presentation that I think also aligns to this, is that aside, I mean, obviously we're emphasizing the relevance of the relationships amongst the various teams, whether it's cross-functionally or cross-functionally between business units and IT. But I think you would also mention about the relationship specifically with the tool and the software, etc. And so I think that the BRM needs to have that within its portfolio of how it attends or how it cares for and help nurture the right relationships amongst within an organization.
So Avi, I'm actually doing my PhD in artificial intelligence, and I just wrote a paper last semester on trust and teammates. And this is where if we use the tool properly, so it seems that, so let's say me and Allison are working together. I don't like the way she's working, right? And I want to give her feedback or something. Usually when you get feedback from a human, it comes off wrong. And what they've seen with the research that we have so far is if an AI tool gives you feedback, you actually take it better than a human. So if it's good feedback to good feedback, it doesn't matter where it comes from. But when it's bad feedback, the AI tool is actually better at doing that than the human is. So this is where it becomes so interesting from a trust aspect in a relationship. And that's why I didn't want to go too into it, because I could do a whole 5-hour session on trust and AI tools and relationships within AI tools, because that's another aspect that we need to start to think about, not as just a BRM, but as an employee at a company, is we're so used to teams being human that a lot of us aren't thinking about teams that are human and AI and how that works. So even year-end evaluation, you should be evaluating the tools that you're using. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So for instance, I was very much into ChatGPT and Claude at the beginning of the year. Claude kind of dipped away from me. It was too restrictive in certain ways, and it wasn't giving me what ChatGPT was giving me. And then ChatGPT, again, like I said, I used Model 5. I didn't like it at all. So I went to Model 4.0. So again, that's the human aspect. And so that's where AI as teammates and the trust between the tools, the human, and teams, how that works, is going to be so pivotal for starting right now. It's already on the forefront. There's research done on it, and it's only going to become stronger.
Hi, thank you so much. This was a great presentation, and a lot of what I heard you say is that it's not an either or, and it's the same with these AI tools, right? So I like Claude for certain things, and I like ChatGPT. I also use Copilot. I understand, Siri is now going to be Google Gemini. We've got all of these tools, and to some degree, we're all trying to figure out, and maybe this is really the conversation, is what the purpose is for us personally with using each of these tools, right? Because it's not a one size fits all. I really liked what you said about it being a personal tool, and me as a BRM, brainstorming is sort of at the center of everything I like to do. The one question I did have for you, and maybe it's overly simplistic or basic, but I'm trying to think of the vocabulary. What words, because relationship centered, I might throw that out. And because it's using two words that people recognize, they may misinterpret it. And that's the other thing I loved about your presentation, was that none of the jargon went unexplained. And so I work in higher ed. I work at the University of Texas at Austin. And so there is a lot of, institutional jargon, and introducing new words is always a special challenge. So just wanted to know what your thoughts were around that.
Is it around us using a certain word, coming up with a certain word, or how do we get corporations to adopt to a word?
I realize I'm sort of again, brainstorming with you right here, but sort of our communication channels, right? So relationships really count on our ability to listen right? And make sure that we've heard and understand what someone is telling us, and also being able to communicate effectively, like you said, not to one population, but to lots of populations. So I don't want to take it because I know we don't have that much time and there are more people wanting to ask you questions, but I'd be very interested, even from a BRM, I aspect, is what does AI offer us in that communication space?
So for that, I would say that that's an interesting question from a BRM Institute perspective, and maybe this could be a workshop, an hour workshop, where we could just get together and kind of brainstorm together, because that would be interesting. So
thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'll take that note and get that back to the team for sure.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mary Elena, for the question. Shelley Bowman, Shelley Bowman.
Yes, no problem at all. Hey, thank you. This has been an excellent webinar. I appreciate it. And so I guess what I'm going to ask is not necessarily a question, is more of a clarifying statement. Because in my practice, I work kind of in a niche area. I work in the public sector, between the concept, and I'll explain why I said the concept, and I'll be brief. The concept of IT and other departments in mission-driven or public sector organizations. And I say the concept because in most of the organizations, there's not, like from a traditional enterprise, this massive IT department that services the entire enterprise. They're vendors, they're outside vendors, they're small IT teams that might provide one or several different services, but then other services may have to be outsourced or what have you. So it's somewhat conceptual what an enterprise IT organization will provide to a big company. I say that because I was met with the question, how do we use AI, right? And they know, hey, this guy's a BRM. He pretty much stands between IT and everybody else. And so that came. And so in my practice, what I've taken lead with is using trust as a product. And trust as a product in the concept in which I consult is, and it aligns exactly with what you were saying, and I love and I appreciate you saying that, is it's not an either or. It's essentially a tool which we can use to edify the relationship, whether it's headquarters or in a corporate case, corporate and legal, or corporate and marketing, or whatever two or more, or parts of the organizations might need to be connected through any type of IT infrastructure or whatever the case may be in this case. And so when the question was raised, how do we use AI? It was followed up with, well, I like this tool, we're used to this tool, whether it be, Chat, Gemini, Grok, or any of those. And so I used that to essentially show, like a human, we all have our talents. We differ. We can do certain things better than others. And if you understand that, and you understand the needs of whatever's on each end of the relationship spectrum, whether it's headquarters, whether it's IT, whether it's marketing, or what have you, then what trust looks like for each individual, and as BRMs, we're uniquely positioned to assess trust and bring the trust value to whatever that relationship may be. We can then look at AI as a means to elevate that trust value between both ends of that relationship spectrum. Case in point, if we're talking about marketing and headquarters from a public perspective, and there's something that needs to be done between those two, one AI might not suffice, but another one may. So it's incumbent on the BRM to either do that research to bring that back as a solution for this particular problem that I'm speaking to, or establish that narrative within a relationship that it's not, to your point, an either or, it's it could be any of these if they suffice once you fully understand the requirements or the needs of that relationship. And so when you can do that, the trust level will begin to elevate for whatever tool, work with each other on each ends of the relationship spectrum, because now whatever is needed or wanted in that relationship is more likely able to be presented as a result of whatever work needs to be done in between.
Definitely, Shelley, with everything that you've said, I totally agree. The one thing I would tell you is I remember when I did my MBA, everything was always it depends, and I hated that.
Yeah.
I hated the gray area. I hated it depends. And I would tell you to use it depends. When somebody's coming to you, right? You need to have a bigger conversation, because in the past it was one software. Finance needed this problem solved. Here's your software. Be happy. Go back into your department type of thing, right?
Right.
Now with all these different tools, it's not that anymore. It's different tools. And in the past, I found that corporations had one software. They could train their employees on it. Now corporations cannot do that because there's so many tools and they work so differently. And that's where we need the person to play around with the tool and kind of build their relationship with that tool and see where it goes. So I would say, like, everything you've said, I agree with, but just make sure that you don't narrow it down, because it could be like, again, a multitude of tools, AI tools, not just one. So just kind of giving, like, telling the people to understand it in that way. Because I find as humans using software, we're using that same methodology to use an AI tool. And that's where it becomes a bit tough. Does that
Got
make
it.
sense?
It does.
Yeah?
No. Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question from Joseph. So
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Jasbir, great presentation. One quick question. Would you encourage BRMs to build at least a strong technical knowledge base, at least in AI? Obviously, as relationship managers, we're focused on relationships, but when the business presents an AI concept, we can pivot it to our AI team. Here at Montefiore, we have a very, very strong AI team. But I think it helps give the business confidence when that BRM has at least a baseline technical understanding of how these tools work, so they can help them think through the strategies, the requirements, maybe the goals that they're trying to solve. So do you think that's a priority for BRMs in the next year or so?
Definitely. So I would say, Joseph, we need to have a technical understanding of the tool so we could communicate it with our partners and that gives them confidence that we understand. But I would add to that we need to create a second dimension. We don't just need to have a technical aspect of the tool. We need to also have a human aspect of the tool. How's it personally? And that's where we haven't seen tech in that aspect. Tech's always been technical. Here's a tool, this is what it does. But now we have a tool and it does more than just that. It's creating a relationship with the human, right? And that's where I find from a BRM perspective, we should take it one step further. So like when we're in the past, like, oh, we launched this tool, how do you like it? The usage is good, or do you find, we're looking at certain KPIs. Now it's, all right, how do you feel about the tool? Like it's more, so kind of gauge it from a technical perspective, but also from a human perspective.
Right.
Because it is, again, a very, personal tool.
Thank you. That's
Does
very,
that
very
make
helpful.
sense?
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
that's very helpful.
all right, it is the top of the hour. Jasbir, we thank you so much. This was a very, very interesting, informative topic. It sounds like a lot of new kind of perspectives and ways to look at AI, and I think it was really appreciated by the community. We will be letting everybody know when this is posted as the recording. We've got a couple questions in text, in the text chat. Do you want me to send them to you
Sure.
offline, and you can answer them, and then we can post them in the community where the webinar gets posted?
Yeah, definitely. That would be great.
Okay. Or I could keep you another half an hour and have you answer questions, but I think I'll send them to you, and then people that didn't see their text question get answered. we'll be able to go back and look for it. But thank you so much. So much value added to the community. I know that they really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate your time. Have a great day.
We appreciate
Bye.
you too. Thank you. Bye.